This is the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G. It has recently launched and this phone is relatively different from the 4G version, so let's take a look. If you'd like to see the unboxing for this phone, then go ahead and click on the information button on the top right corner to watch it. Starting off with the design and build quality. The A22 5G has plastic back with plastic frame. The back has a matte texture which is nice. On the left is the dual SIM slot, and on the right is the volume buttons and the power button integrated with fingerprint scanner. On the top is a microphone, and on the bottom is the headphone jack, USB-C port and a speaker. In terms of heaviness, this phone has a bit of weight to it when you hold it. Also, talking about the camera bump, it is extremely minimal, which is nice to see. In the UK, this phone comes with NFC support, and as mentioned before, this phone has dual SIM support. The fingerprint scanner is quite quick and reliable, and so is the face unlock feature, which is good to see. Mentioning this phone's vibration motor. Since this phone is roughly around £209, as expected, the vibration motor is quite poor and weak. Moving on to the display. It's a 6.6-inch display with an aspect ratio of 20:9. It has a TFT LCD display with PPI of 399. The display has 90Hz refresh rate capability and it is a Full HD display. And yeah, if it isn't obvious, this phone has a notch. After a few days of using this phone, I've gotten used to the notch. The bezels are small considering the price, but the bottom chin is on the bigger side. The screen size is great for watching content because of the big screen size. Samsung doesn't mention how bright this display is, but sources point to around 385 nits. It's not the brightest outdoors, especially under direct sunlight, which is quite disappointing. The quality of this display is pretty much average. It's not an LCD display, so you don't get those vibrant colors and deep black colors, but for this price, this display is good enough. Something that I really want to mention is the oleophobic coating on the screen. It feels like Samsung didn't use any oleophobic coating on this phone at all. When you touch the screen, it instantly gets dirty with fingerprints and oily smudges. I'd recommend anyone using this phone to get a screen protector immediately. Moving on to the processor. This phone's processor is the 7nm MediaTek Dimensity 700 5G, which is a mouthful. This chipset also supports Bluetooth 5.1. As for the processor day-to-day experience, I'll get to it later when talking about the software experience. This phone supports 5G and it gets pretty decent 5G speeds, which is actually awesome considering the price. This phone has the Mali G57 GPU. It's a decent GPU and I roughly get 40 FPS on PUBG Mobile. The gameplay is overall smooth and consistent. The phone doesn't heat up too much as well, which is a nice bonus. Considering the price, the gameplay capability on this phone is adequate. Moving on to the cameras. This phone has 3 cameras, 48 megapixel main wide camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a useless 2 megapixel depth sensor. The back camera can only record up to 2K 30 FPS, which I find to be disappointing. I wish it would record 60 FPS. As for the selfie camera, it's an 8 megapixel wide camera and it records up to 1080p 30 FPS. Now, talking about the photo quality on this phone, I'm going to talk critically and honestly. Before I say anything, bear in mind this phone costs like £200, so it's not a flagship. This phone doesn't have OIS straight off the bat, which is unsurprising given the price. The photo quality on both the wide and ultra wide is good. The colors are vibrant and adequately detailed. The dynamic range really isn't top class though. If you look at the sky in the pictures, it really doesn't have much detail, and if you look at the shadowy areas of the tree, there also isn't much detail. It's just dark. The night mode on this phone is really phenomenal though. Knowing that this phone doesn't have OIS, just make sure to, hold the phone steady when capturing night shots. The selfie photos on this phone are average at best. Outdoor selfies looks decent, but indoor selfies look soft and overall a bit grainy. The back camera video recording is poor. To start with, it doesn't have 60 FPS recording, which I love. The colors when video recording are straight up oversaturated at times, to the point where it doesn't look very pleasant. Since it doesn't have OIS, the footage can be a bit shaky, especially when running. The dynamic range when video recording is honestly horrible. So the cameras on this phone isn't really anything special, but I will say it's nice to have an ultra-wide camera, a good ultra-wide camera for this price. Okay, this is the running test. Moving on to the speaker. It's a single firing speaker located on the bottom, which is a bummer, especially knowing that some other phones at this price point has stereo speakers. The speaker isn't the loudest and it isn't best in terms of quality. When you raise the volume to like 60 or 70%, then it starts to sound a bit tinny and not so pleasant sound quality. Overall, the speakers are average at best. On to the storage and RAM. In the UK, the only option from Samsung.com is 64GB of storage, which is really strange. In the year 2021, it's really common for people to use more than 128GB of storage on their phone, but thankfully it has micro SD card support for up to 1TB, which is decent. The phone I have available in the UK has 4GB of RAM. The experience with this is that I can roughly get up to 4 apps running in the background before they start refreshing. It's a bummer because if I had access to higher storage and RAM variants, I would definitely buy that instead. Moving on to the battery. This phone has a 5000 mAh battery capacity, which is a massive upgrade over last year's 4000 mAh battery. The battery life is excellent on this device. I can easily get 1 day's worth of battery and even up to 2 days worth of battery depending on my usage. For context, when the phone is at roughly 70% after using social media and playing a bit of PUBG, I managed to get a screen on time of more than 3 hours. So the battery performance on this phone is extremely impressive. This phone comes with a 15W charger in the box, which I think is a bit disappointing. Since this phone has a humongous 5000 mAh battery, it takes quite a long time to fully charge. I would have liked to see a 25W charger in the box as the minimum, but then you have to remember that their top flagships doesn't come with a charger in the box anyways, so you kind of have to be grateful for what you get. On to the software. This phone comes shipped with Android 11 running One UI Core 3. Now this is not the same thing as One UI 3. It has most features found on One UI 3, however there are some things such as Good Lock that is not supported on this software. As for the day-to-day experience on this phone, it is quick in terms of launching apps and switching between different apps, but on very rare occasions, this phone does tend to have frame drops and lag, but this is rare. Most of the times, this phone is responsive for me. Thankfully, this phone supports Google Discover feed on the left side of the Samsung launcher, which is nice to see. There's not too many pre-installed apps on this phone in the UK, thankfully. As of now, I haven't experienced any bugs or glitches, which is a welcomed experience. Although this phone does run One UI Core 3, it still has many features like Edge Panel, pop-up view mode, one-handed operation plus, scrolling screenshot, Samsung theme store, and so on. Unfortunately, this phone lacks an always-on display or some sort of ambient display. This is kind of expected since it has an LCD display. Another negative thing I have to mention about One UI Core 3 is that the software tends to push you to enable advertisement in areas like the lock screen, which is frustrating. However, after setting up the phone correctly, I thankfully didn't see any ads in the user interface. As for the software updates, this phone will get quarterly security updates, not monthly, and it should get guaranteed major updates for 2 years and 3 years of security updates, which is decent when compared to other phone manufacturers. Moving on to the price. In the UK, this phone starts at £209, which I think is priced fairly. This is one of Samsung's cheapest 5G phones. When you compare this phone to the Galaxy A21, which released last year, it does have substantial upgrades and changes, so I think this phone is overall worth the price and I would recommend anyone to get it. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions about the phone down in the comments below. Consider liking the video and subscribing. And that's all for now. See you in the next video.